Okay, hear me out. Not a conspiracy theorist, or a bird watcher, or even someone who notices weird stuff most of the time. But a few months ago I realized something that's made me question whether I've been sleepwalking through life or not. Every single bird in my town, pigeons, sparrows, even the goddamn crows, avoids the old radio tower near the high school. Not just casually, like they'll detour mid-flight to skirt around it, and nobody else seems to care. It started when I was jogging past the tower one morning. My AirPod died, thanks Apple, so I actually heard the silence. No chirping, no flapping, nothing. Just this weird low hum coming from the tower itself. I stopped to tie my shoe and watched a flock of geese, honking loud enough to wake the dead, suddenly bank hard left, like they'd hit some invisible wall. I texted my friend Jenna, "Am I losing it, or do birds hate that tower?" She replied, "LOL, you just noticed?" Turns out people have noticed. There's a 4-year-old thread on our town's subreddit called, "Why do birds avoid the tower? Serious." Most comments were jokes about avian COVID or haunted infrastructure, but one user claimed his granddad helped build the tower in the 60s, said there were issues with the foundation. That post got deleted a couple days later. I had to check an archive site to read it. Here's the personal gut punch. My grandfather died last year. He was an electrician here in the 70s, and he used to take me to feed the pigeons at work. He'd say, "Birds know things we don't, kiddo. Listen to them." So maybe I'm projecting, but this feels like a breadcrumb he left me. I started digging. The tower's owned by the town's utility company, but when I called, the receptionist transferred me to a voicemail that just beeped for 10 seconds and hung up. I tried recording the hum on my phone, but it just came out like muffled static. Then I borrowed Jenna's DSLR and took close-ups of the tower. Zoomed in, I noticed these faint, grid-like scorch marks near the base. Not rust, but burns. Last week I drove to Baton Rouge and talked to a Tulane physics professor who studies animal behavior. I showed him the photos. He frowned and said, "Infrasound, or electromagnetism, but why here?" Then he Googled our town and stiffened. There was a Department of Energy grant here in 1967 for civil infrastructure testing. That hasn't left my mind since. The tower's just there, humming, empty, and every time I walk my dog past it, I think about my granddad's hands, rough from work, tossing breadcrumbs to birds that didn't yet know to be afraid. My dog, a mutt named Beans I adopted after my granddad died, used to trot happily beside me, sniffing every fire hydrant and mailbox. But lately, even he tenses up when we get near the tower. His ears flatten, his tail tucks, and he pulls hard on the leash like he's trying to drag me away. Last Tuesday, he outright refused to walk past it. Just sat down in the middle of the sidewalk, whining until I turned us around. I posted about it on Nextdoor, asking if someone else's pets acted weird near the tower. Mrs. Guidry, the lady who runs the antique shop downtown, replied, "My cat's been hiding under the bed since March. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe not." That's when I decided to go full detective. I dug through my granddad's old toolbox in the garage, the one he'd let me play with as a kid. Buried under rusty wrenches and a half-empty roll of electrical tape, I found a folder labeled SH Utilities 74. Inside were faded schematics of the tower, handwritten notes in his blocky cursive, and a Polaroid of him and 3 other men standing in front of the tower, all wearing hard hats and grim expressions. On the back he'd written, "Troubleshooting the resonance issue, still no fix." Resonance issue, that hum. In July 1974, there was a single paragraph buried between a bake sale ad and an obituary. Local utilities crew reports minor delays in water tower maintenance due to technical irregularities. Project lead assures residents there's no cause for concern. No follow-up articles and no more details. Jenna thinks I've lost it. She came over last weekend and saw the tower photos taped to my living room wall, red yarn connecting my grandfather's Polaroid to the scorch marks. "You're gonna end up on one of those true crime podcasts," she said, half joking. But later, when I showed her the schematic, she froze. "Wait, my Uncle Frank worked at the power plant in the 80s. He used to rant about that damn tower messing with the grid. We all thought he was just a drunk." We tracked down Frank at his fishing cabin outside town. He was sober now, but his hands shook when I mentioned the tower. "They brought in these units after a storm in 87, he said. "Big metal boxes bolted to the tower's legs. No logos, no serial numbers, just plain gray boxes. Crew got orders to leave them alone. Next day they were gone, and the birds never came back." The next morning I went back to the tower with a ladder. Not my smartest move, but I needed to see those scorch marks up close. The humming got louder as I climbed, vibrating in my teeth. Up close, the grid pattern wasn't random. It looked almost circuit-like, etched into the metal. I scraped a sample into a Ziploc bag and sent it to one of those online labs that analyze weird substances. 3 days later, the results came back. Traces of boron nitride in a proprietary alloy, consistent with aerospace shielding applications. I googled it. Boron nitride is used in everything from rocket nozzles to nuclear reactors. The next morning, I found a sticky note on my windshield. No words, just a crude drawing of the tower with an arrow pointing to its base. I don't know who left it, I don't know if I care. This is starting to feel like some bad TV show. All I know is, tonight, after midnight, I'm going back. I've got a shovel, a headlamp, and a 90-year-old pocket knife from my granddad's toolbox. Maybe I'll find nothing, maybe I'll find answers. Or maybe I'll find out why the birds are smart enough to stay away. Alright, so I am about to tell you the weirdest thing that has ever happened in my town, and I need you to not dismiss this as some creepypasta. I'm sweating just thinking about it. It started last night at 3:17 a.m. Yes, I checked my phone. When my dog started whining like someone was twisting her tail. Normally, she's just a lazy corgi who'd sleep through a tornado, but this, she practically dragged me to the window. That's when I saw the flicker of a flashlight cutting across the old radio tower. You know the type. Rusted, peeling, with that stupid no trespassing sign that's been half-eaten by graffiti since the 90s. No one goes near it, not even the meth heads, and I say that with experience. By morning, the whole town was buzzing. Someone posted a blurry photo on the local Facebook group, showing a 6-foot gash in the chain-link fence around the tower. The comments were a mess. Karens blaming teens, boomers muttering about immigrants, and one guy insisting it was raccoons. But here's the thing. I was the one who called the cops. Not because I'm a hero, but because when I walked my dog past the tower at sunrise, I noticed something off. The fence wasn't just cut. The edges of the metal were melted, like someone took a blowtorch to it. And inside the fence line, the grass was dead. Not trampled, just straight up dead. Crispy yellow patches in perfect circles, like crop circles, but way more lame. I snapped a photo and sent it to my buddy Dave, who's into conspiracy stuff. He replied, "Bro, that's some MIB level shit." But here's the personal detail that makes my skin crawl. I take photos of that tower every fall. It's dumb, but there's this oak tree next to it that turns fire red, and I've got a whole Instagram series. 47 followers, don't judge. When I compared this morning's pic to last year's, I realized one of the tower's ladder rungs, the third one up, was missing. Not broken, just gone. The bolts were still there, clean like it had been unscrewed by a robot. The cops, useless. Officer Mullins, who once gave me a ticket for rolling a stop sign on my bike, shrugged and said, "Kids vandalize things." But kids don't carry industrial-grade tools at 3 a.m., and they don't leave whatever that was. Wait, I haven't even told you the worst part. After the cops left, I went back. Don't ask why. Curiosity, maybe. Stupidity. The hole in the fence was still open, so I ducked through. Big mistake. The second I stepped into the dead grass circle, my ears popped like I was on a plane. My dog started growling, low and mean, which I've never heard her do. Then I smelled it. Burned sugar, like someone was melting caramel. I booked it out of there, but not before noticing one last thing. On the tower's base, right where the ladder used to be, there was a symbol spray-painted in silver. Not like a gang tag or anything. It looked like 3 overlapping triangles with a tiny dash at the bottom. I googled it later, but I couldn't find anything. But when I texted the town historian, she called me immediately. "Where did you see that?" she hissed. I told her. There was silence, and then a response. "That symbol was on the original blueprints for the tower, from 1921. They painted over it before construction." So, a fence melted open, a missing ladder rung, a 100-year-old symbol reappearing, and a smell that's still stuck in my sinuses. The town's moved on already. Someone's cow got loose today, so that's the new drama. But I'm stuck here, refreshing my phone, waiting for someone to say they've seen something. Anything. All I know is that tower was built for something, and my dog won't go near that tower anymore. I didn't think a 300-foot steel skeleton could scream until I heard it hit the ground. Let me back up. My name's Dale, and for the past 3-ish years I've worked as the overnight engineer for KITX 95.5 FM, a classic rock station broadcasting from the Oklahoma-Texas border. The job is simple. Babysit the equipment, make sure the tower's green lights stay green, and pray the 50,000 watt transmitter doesn't fry itself. Most nights it's just me, a thermos of coffee, and the hum of machinery in a concrete bunker under the tower. Boring, yeah, but it pays my rent and it keeps me away from people, which as of recent I'm starting to rethink. The tower itself is in the middle of nowhere, 20 minutes outside Hugo. Miles of scrubland, coyotes howling, and a single gravel road that feels like it was paved by someone who absolutely hated tires. The only neighbors are cows and the occasional meth head looking for copper wire, which, surprise, brings me to last Tuesday. I just finished my 2 a.m. equipment check. Everything normal. Tower lights steady, transmitter humming like a contented robot. I was scrolling Reddit half asleep when the monitors flickered. Not a full outage, just a blip. I shrugged it off. Storms mess with the grid sometimes, but the sky was clear. Then the alarms went off. The tower's tilt sensor, that's the one that never goes off unless a tornado's ripping through or, well, someone's cutting the guy wires. I grabbed the shotgun we keep bolted to the wall. Yes, it's that kind of town. And ran outside. The tower was still standing, but something felt very wrong. The air smelled like burnt metal, and then I heard it. A low, groaning creak like the earth itself was yawning. I shined my flashlight up the tower. 3/4 of the way, the steel beams shuddered. One of the guy wires, thick as my forearm, was dangling loose. Its anchor post snapped clean. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," I muttered. That's when I saw the headlights. 2 sets parked a half-mile down the access road. Not cop cars, not ranch trucks, just a couple beat-up sedans. I radioed Sheriff Park's office. No answer because, of course, and called 911. While I waited, I did something stupid. I drove towards the cars. Big mistake. By the time I got close, the figures were already backlit by the headlights, loading spools of cable into a trunk. I honked and shouted, "Sheriff's on his way!" They froze. Then one raised a crowbar. I'll admit it, I panicked. I threw my truck in reverse, fishtailing backwards as they revved towards me. Gravel sprayed. My radio crackled with dispatch finally picking up. "Units en route. Stay in your vehicle." Too late. I swerved off-road, aiming for the tower. If I could get to the bunker, I could lock myself in, but the sedan kept gaining. At the tower base, I bailed out and sprinted for the door. The crowbar guy, later ID'd as Matt Wilson, was 10 feet behind me, no more. Then the tower screamed. It started with a metallic twang, like a guitar string snapping, then another and another. The remaining guy wires gave way, and the tower leaned, slow at first, then all at once. Matt froze, staring up. I dove behind a generator as 300 feet of steel came crashing down. The noise was unreal, a thunderclap mixed with a car crash. Dust choked the air. When it cleared, the tower lay twisted across the field, and Matt's sedan was half crushed under a support beam. His partner, Candace Logan, stumbled out of their second car, screaming. Not for Matt, but for the copper. She started hacking at the fallen wires with bolt cutters, even as sirens wailed in the distance. Sheriff Park found her like that, knee-deep in debris, stuffing copper into a duffel bag while Matt groaned under the wreckage. Turned out they'd hit 3 other towers in Texas, but KITX was their big score. All for $100 of scrap metal. Why am I posting this now? Because tonight, driving back to the site, I found something in the dirt. A single work glove, crusted with dried blood and copper shavings. It's sitting on my desk now, next to the sheriff's report. Sometimes I wonder if Candace and Matt ever listened to KITX. If they heard Springsteen's Radio Nowhere blasting from the same tower they killed. Probably not. The station's back online now, but barely. We're running at 10% power from a backup antenna while they rebuild the tower. Will Payne, the owner, keeps muttering about $500,000 in damages like a mantra. As for me, I've got a new job title, Eyewitness. The DA wants me to testify against Candace and Matt. Turns out they weren't just scrappers, they're linked to a meth ring out of Paris, Texas. The crowbar, stolen from a hardware store. The cars, stolen too. Classic small-town crime spree. But here's what keeps me up about all of this. They'd done this before. Sheriff Park showed me photos of their other jobs. Towers toppled like dominoes, communities left without emergency broadcasts, all for nothing but pocket change. Oh, and Matt's suing the station, claims we lured him into a death trap. His lawyers arguing the tower was poorly maintained, never mind the bolt cutters in his trunk. But hey, if you're ever near Hugo, tune to 95.5. The signal's weak, but we're still here. And if you see headlights on a back road at 2 a.m., maybe don't chase him. Okay, buddy, you lost desk privileges. In July 1974, there was a single paragraph in July 1974, there was a single paragraph buried oh my